Hey there guys, and welcome back to Europe in Detail. I hope you guys had a really good Christmas and a good New Year, but it is now time to get back down to business. Well, at least it is for me, but it is very nice to be back in Spain. And in this episode, I really get my A into G in terms of finishing this little city or town. And I would say at a guess, I'm probably more than halfway through the town at the end of this episode, and it's really quite varied as well. We do a bit of farmland, we do heaps of buildings and heaps of different types of buildings as well, from low commercial to residential to public spaces. Yeah, I definitely haven't focused on one particular build in this episode. We do a raft of different things, which is really cool. So the first thing I really want to focus on is filling out more of these blocks, and let's start right on the cliff edge here. Now, it's fairly common to have a football field in most European cities, especially Spain. They love their football, so we're going to put one in right here. And actually I wanted to put one in Borgovino, but obviously the terrain we were working with, that really wasn't going to work. But I found a really nice one on the workshop here that fits really neat to the block. Once you see me place that down, I'll start to detail around it. There's a small amount of low commercial in the area and mostly bush and park area around the field though, especially on that cliffside, because could you imagine kicking a soccer ball all the way down the bottom of that cliff? Bag's not getting that. So I've made sure to put heaps of trees and stuff there so that it would have to be a very accurate kick to get all the way down there. But I'm really pleased with how that comes out, and once that's done we can move on to the next section across the cliff here. And we're going to put a little private hotel in here. I'm using one of Ernesto's beautiful stone buildings. I'm not sure if it's actually a hotel or not, but I thought it looked appropriate. And it was just, to be honest, just too nice not to use. So the idea is to wriggle that in position so it looks like it's got a really nice view off the cliff. Then I want to use some surface networks and create a big deck out the back here so that I can put some pools and private spas and just some really nice zen garden type areas in, right on the edge of the cliff. I mean, you could imagine the view off here, it would just be magnificent. So you can see here I've also made an entryway out the front, and aside from the pools I've used some nice decals and just some really nice clean looking gardens, and then bought that cliff and some scrubby looking grass right up to the edge of the hotel. So let's move on to the next one, and we're making some good pace here. So on this next bit here I want to create a bit of a public space where maybe live bands and stuff can play, and people can just wander down and watch them for free, and it's just a really social area and maybe a nice area to meet. And I guess also from a building point of view, this in my head was really fun to build. I want to make it really eye-catching from above, so we're going to have some round stairs with decals to match, have the band in the middle, and have it all make sense so that if you're going there to watch a band you can sit on these stairs and get a good vantage point. And I'm really pleased with how that comes out. It is really eye-catching from above. It catches your eye straight away, so job done. So while we're on a roll, we might as well move on to this last piece to do along the cliff edge. And in here I want to have a little cul-de-sac with some really high-end Spanish villas, all with really nice pools and done-up yards. And just, you could imagine these houses are very, very expensive. So I've also tried to pack these in reasonably tightly without going crazy. I still want to get some yards around them. Not to mention, everything I've built along the cliff edge up to this point has followed the real life Ronda in some way or another. So I am trying to follow that as well. So here I carry on my crusade of filling out these blocks, but this time instead of hotels and football pitches, we're going with just regular old Spanish buildings. Now when it comes to placing these down, There's only one real main rule that I'm following, and that's to keep as tightly to these roads as I can. These are all wall-to-wall buildings, but from my observations of Spanish architecture and the way that these cities are built and towns, it's very important for me to keep these buildings as close to the roadside and as close to each other as I can. There really isn't much space free even behind the buildings whatsoever. And admittedly, I've had to use a couple of PO structures in the middle of the blocks just to fill them out, but 95% of the buildings on these street frontages are working buildings. And because I wanted these buildings to fit very snug together, I had to be really careful putting them together and make sure the right buildings fit together. But because there was literally hundreds of them going down, I just couldn't get them perfect. There is some buildings clipping into other buildings, but I've tried to be as vigilant as I can, fitting windows against other walls, for instance. At this point here, I was really sick of putting buildings down. I must have put down 100 or 150 buildings in the space of about 6 hours. So that was enough for a week, and we're going to move on to some farmland here, or countryside. So having a look at Ronda here, this is very different to what I know here in New Zealand. We've got very irregular shaped paddocks, very erratic roads, and a really scorched earth colour to some of these fields, almost Australian like. There's also a fair bit of elevation here. It goes up and down, and there really isn't one part that's flat. So I'm going to start trying to build this in game by working on the river. Now I need to make this quite a bit more narrow than what the game allows me to, and my little trick is to terraform in as far as I can without the water starting to do really funky things. And then I'm going to use some proc ROPs from Grey Flame to make it really narrow in a couple of places. This is the same technique I used for the watermill, for instance, when we first did Gotsberg. If you've been watching that long, I think that was episode 3. But basically this technique means that I can use the prop rock to create like my own riverbanks down the side and bring them in as close as I want. So some parts of the river might be really narrow and other parts might be quite wide. But the real kicker of using this method is you've got complete control over the riverbanks. You can make them really tight and steep, and cliffs if you like, have them open out into sort of more beachy areas. And I will say that it does take a long time, this technique, but it can be good, especially if you're sort of just detailing certain areas. So I was having some real trouble with this river flowing properly, so I had to go right up to where I'd started it and sort of recreate this so that we've had a better flow. So I've tried to create some sort of natural valleys here and then run the river through that, and I'm just using a water placement thingy and just hiding it up one of the valleys. So the number one thing here is to try and get a nice even slope down to the river that we've already got running underneath the Ponte Nevo bridge. I'm also going to try and make sure that the water level here is appropriate so that I can create a really nice scene on the train ride in. There's a viaduct that comes over that we're going to detail very shortly. So it's at this spot right here that we're going to create our really nice nature scene. As it stands at the moment, we got no trains coming up this way, but once we do, I really want this to be one of the highlight spots of that train ride. As it stands at the moment, I've got a quite contemporary style viaduct. I might go for a more old stone one in future, but at the moment I'm really focusing on just these cliffs and trees and rocks around this area. It is a little bit tricky because this is a bit closer to Borgovino than the Spanish town we're building at the moment, so I've sort of got to be mindful of that transition as well. But when it's all finished, it looks great, and I can't wait to see the train whizzing through this scene. So now we've got our river all in place and it's flowing a bit better, we can come back to the farmland at the front here and really finish this off. I knew I had my work cut out for me here because this is quite the large area, and in order for this to do justice to the rest of this town, it's got to be pretty detailed, at least in the parts that matter. And I was really excited about doing this farmland because this is actually the first conventional style farmland that I've done in this series. And it's also very unique because the bottom of this cliff, if you were looking at it aerially from directly above, for instance, it's very close to the town, so it gives off this really strong contrast of countryside that could be 2 hours out of any major town, being right next to very, very dense, built up urban areas. You'll see what I mean come the end of the episode, but I've really fallen in love with that look. And it's fair to say it is really, really unique. So getting back to what we're doing on camera here, I'm making my way up the river here, doing our little method that I've been talking about earlier. You're also going to see a hell of a lot of trees go in. This particular part of the farmland here is heavily forested, all in and around this river. And I'd really like to stick true to that. Now with all of the terrain set, I can start putting in these roads, and I'm using a no frills gravel vanilla road because it does the trick. In fact, it is the closest road I could find to these real Spanish ones that I'm going for, and I'm picking that these are lime because they are very bright white, and lime chip is everywhere in the area. So I would have loved to have found a road that was similar to that, but this is pretty close. So the erratic nature of the road here is just following the terrain mostly, and the last thing I'll do here is put in a few buildings where I want these farmhouses and stuff like that. Now these Spanish farmhouses are where I'm going to concentrate most of my detailing, if not all of it. There's about 7 or 8 of these I've placed in across the farm here, and I've pretty much committed to detailing all of them individually. So the main points I'm focusing on here to make these look realistic is we've got clusters of houses or houses without farm buildings. Lots of them have pools or their own little veggie patch. There's a lot of red outdoor areas and red concrete in general. And of course they are all that Spanish architecture we have been using up to this point. If I can nail those main points, all the rest of the things I can do can vary. Different courtyards, different style houses, different pools with varying sizes. It doesn't really matter as long as I get those main points. Finally here I can finish the farm fields using the mod Theme Mixer 2. I've changed some of these resources to look like farm paddocks, and I've also changed the fertility to this really burnt earth looking red colour, which gives off a really nice warm sunny vibe. I also do a bit of detailing up the coastline. Of course the coast isn't there in the real life version of Ronda, so I've sort of just had to makeshift that as much as I can. And I also just try and add in some trees that we would see in the area, like lots of pines and lots of olive trees. and we especially see a lot of these between the paddocks. Let me know what you guys think of this area in the comments, but I think this really tops off the town so far. In the space of one episode, we have more than doubled the size of our little town here. Not only that, but I feel like I've raised the bar, and this has gotten a lot better. And you guys, with all your suggestions and help with your comments, has definitely helped me. Sometimes I can go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and sometimes I need some grounding. So anyway guys, I have got some extended cinematics here for you guys to watch, and I feel like this is some of the best cinematics I've got. And this town is just looking superb. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Please hit the thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. And if you've watched a bit of my stuff and you haven't subscribed yet, maybe you could consider that. I would love that. But anyway guys, look after yourselves, take it easy, and I will see you on the next episode of Europe in Detail. See you guys.